from VIBGYOR, the partner from India, on our discussion. And of course, this is important to have this kind of a global networks when we discuss these ideas. And I'm very happy to see that the Climate Academy has very prominent young people there also. And welcome to all of you to our second session on Global EU's Overshoot Day discussion between members of the European Parliament. And now I have Margaret Auken, a great friend of mine and a very long-term active member of the not only European Parliament but Global EU. So you can be called a true parliamentarian. Absolutely. And always working for sustainability and environmental matters. So very happy to have you here. Then very happy to start and continue the discussions this time with Brielle from India. Very glad that you can join us online. Then, of course, Neil from Belgium. Happy to see you. And then from Sweden, welcome, Valentina. And let's move to questions and comments. And Brielle, would you like to start?
It is a privilege to connect with you today. I, Brielle, am a student studying in VIBGYOR High, and today I will be representing Climate Academy from VIBGYOR Group of Schools, India. Albert Einstein once said that the world would not be destroyed by those who did evil, but by those who watched them without doing anything. Being a part of Climate Academy has really helped me see that, which is why I am truly honored to be in front of you here today, which brings me to my questions. I have two questions, and my first question for you is it fair to compare India's emissions to those of ultra-high developed nations when they have emitted an average of 873 tons of carbon dioxide per capita during the Industrial Revolution?
Well, if I start, Brielle, and then Margaret will continue, I think that your question is very fair. Is that right? And then when we are talking about the overconsumption, actually the world is using worth almost 2 planets of resources every year. But there are many countries like India being in the limits of 1 planet. But then USA is consuming per capita 4 planets worth of resources, and we in Europe over 3 planets. And that's why when we make global agreements, I like very much the debate and discussion about climate justice. Because nowadays, actually, those that are profiting with not combating climate change are getting the windfalls and the money and the capital. And those ones who are less well-off, be it nations or people, especially women, they are paying the price with the food crisis, with floods, with heat waves, with health and all that. And then one idea that has been tossed around is that with the climate justice, we all would have a climate budget in the planet. And if I can't sort of have myself on my climate budget, then I would need to buy it from someone else. Let's say in India, or Brielle, maybe from you. And that would sort of equal the economic injustices in one hand, and then on the second hand, limit my capacity, for example, to overconsume the global climate budgets. How, Margaret, you would like to continue?
I will say that, of course, it's not fair. All this injustice is just up in our faces. But, and you know, the devil is in the butt. Being the grandmother of 8, looking into their future, you two young people here, looking into your future, you know, it's not much comfort in saying, okay, no, then forget about India, and then we only will punish, or what you call it, the rest. That would be of no help to you, no comfort to you. And I think that India, well, India is also dealing with another problem inside India, of the big injustice inside India. And I think that makes it the problem even more alarming, that you have these big differences in the living standards and so on. But, none of us, not in my country, Denmark, with one of the worst records on overconsumption, and India and many other poor countries with the opposite. None of us are helped if any of us say, well, it's not my problem because it's not fair to make it my problem. And no, it's not fair at all to anybody. Yeah, of course, to my generation in my country, and I've been screaming about this here for 30 years. And I've seen in all these years that, leading forces in my country, in the EU, still says, oh, we don't need to do anything with our consumption. We can do everything with technical fixes. But we can't fix with technical fixes. We have no example of a decrease in consumption. Yes, you have in products, but it's always eaten by the amounts of products. Every time, and that goes also for energy. So I think we should stick together. We are all responsible for your future, for my grandchildren's future, that you have a future to look into. And that means that none of us have the right, not even India, have the right to say we just continue full consumption, because that won't save your future. And that would be my point here, that India, as well as many other poor countries, should, if they can come forward with good examples of how to do it, and they can teach us, and we can hopefully teach them how we can make this smarter, but at the same time adapt to a other lifestyle. Because we have known this here for 30, 40 years, that this lifestyle we have is not sustainable at all. Even if it's very difficult to make politicians and others to admit it, because they think then they won't be re-elected. I think they will be re-elected. I've said that. I've been re-elected every time by being very clear on this here. And that has to be said very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Brielle, how would you like to continue?
Thank you so much for your response. I completely agree with you. Even I believe that we should all work together, and no country can really ignore what's happening right now. But I have yet another question. Why is the onus on India and China to reduce their emissions when ultra-high developed nations have a much higher rate of emissions and resource use?
Well, this is a question where I'm pretty tough, because it's a bit like, if you have had bad life habits and your cholesterol is higher, and then someone else has just exactly the same figure, only eating 4 years eggs and unhealthy diets, you can't say that you need to start because you ate unhealthy foods for 20 years and you can wait 15 years to start. Because the health in this question is the planetary health. We need all to act. And why it is so important to act in India and in China is that, as you know, these are very big countries, actually continents. They are responsible for big and growing number of the emissions, and they will be the most vulnerable, suffering the consequences also. Then the question is, of course, about the climate justice, what we just discussed. But then the question about the fact that does it need to happen? Yes, it does. And both countries need to develop that kind of economic growth that is climate neutral. And this is something where we can sort of work together. Let's say sustainable textiles, India being in textiles area or in food area. India actually has very sustainable diets if you compare it to Western diets. Sustainable constructions. And actually India is very big in building solar farms and, for example, building new electrified fleets in transportation. So there's possibilities. And then we would need to remember that having old-fashioned steel and burning coal and spoiling our air in our urban areas is not actually a favorable choice to anyone. So we, by transforming our economies, both in India, both in China, both also in USA, and of course also in EU, makes actually better quality of life, better, more pure businesses, and better health for our citizens. So it is a good choice, and actually there's not a alternative to this one, except sort of entering at some point already, maybe in 20 years, in full-blown climate catastrophe that no one can actually feel okay with. And you?
Yeah, well, I can just say I totally agree, but I would add, I don't use the word sustainable growth because we've never seen it. It's just been growth. This word has been used since '86 as in the Brundtland Commission, in the sustainable growth. It's just growth. And, you know, this consumption has just increased and increased with all the deficits and all the bad things as you were describing. And I think the best advice to give you, don't repeat our mistakes. You know, don't act as idiotic as we have done in our countries. And I think we should learn how to, and of course we can say that we can make a better life with a different kind of consumption. But I think we should be more clear about that. For many people it will be seen as, well, a little bit, you know, it will go out, it will hurt your comfort, it will hurt your, you know. But the bicycle is a very good alternative to cars in many places. Yeah, even just to tell you. And if you combine bicycles, you know, I have, my electric bike is a big advantage there. And with collective transport, and don't say it's a human right to destroy the planet because I need a big car. Or two, which is very often the case, because, you know, it's most practical to come around with my children and so on. And no, please, 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 you are one of the biggest economies. You are still a democracy in India, which we should appreciate, and India and China. But what you are doing will be so important for the whole planet. And then, of course, you should keep on addressing us, our countries, with all the things we do wrong and urge us again and again to improve and to learn from that. But don't say that you have the full right to make our mistakes, because that would be very stupid. You know, then there will be no future for you and for your big population in India either.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Brielle, and thank you for your activity, and all the best luck to your work on India, on these questions. And yes, keep on pushing us in European Parliament and in our member states for better policies. And good luck with the Climate Academy in India.